The retirement planning industry does not want you to see this video because these 7 Tennessee towns make their $1.5 million number look like a sales pitch. See, there's a version of retirement nobody talks about, the one where the check doesn't have to get bigger because the bills got smaller. The average retired worker collects right around $2,000 a month. A couple closer to $3,600. Nationally, that's a struggle. In the 7 towns on this list, it's a paid-off house, a full tank, and money left over on the 30th. So I drove all 7, and I found a soybean town of 10,000 people with a $100 million museum in it, a county where your neighbors travel by horse and buggy, a courthouse where they put a schoolteacher on trial for teaching science and still hold court today, and a lake holding a world record nobody has broken in 70 years. If that sounds better than another year of watching your account go the wrong direction, hit that subscribe button now, because we're counting all 7 down and you do not want to miss number 1. Let's count it down. Number 7, Union City, Tennessee. When I first drove into Union City, I thought I'd taken a wrong turn into the wrong video. Northwest corner of the state, flat farm country, about 10,000 people, a courthouse square, and a whole lot of soybeans. Nothing here says millionaire. Then I found out what somebody built on the edge of town. Start with the numbers, because that's why you're here. Obion County runs some of the lowest housing costs in Tennessee, and Tennessee already sits well under the national average. A solid brick 3-bedroom on a real lot, garage, yard, quiet street, trades here in a range people on the coast don't believe when I say it out loud. Sell almost anything you own now, buy this outright, and your monthly housing cost drops to taxes, insurance, and utilities. On this county's rate, that's a bill one Social Security check covers with groceries left over. And there's no state income tax on any of it. Not on your benefit, not on your pension, not on an IRA withdrawal. Tennessee scrapped the last piece of that in 2021. Whatever lands in your account is what you keep, and that alone is worth a few hundred a month against most states you're coming from. Now here's the wildcard fact about Union City. Right outside town sits Discovery Park of America, a 50-acre museum campus with a dinosaur hall, a Japanese garden, a full Civil War exhibit, and a 100-foot glass tower you climb for the view. A local family's foundation built it, in a town of 10,000 people, for something around $100 million. That's the museum I promised you at the start. $100 million, in a soybean town. Here's your takeaway. Cheap does not have to mean empty, and it usually only takes one person deciding otherwise. Before you write off a small town for having nothing in it, find out what somebody local already built there. Number 6, Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. When I first drove into Lawrenceburg, I noticed the shoulders of the road before I noticed anything else. Wide, paved smooth, all the way out of town in both directions. Buggies. That's the horse and buggy I promised you. Just north of here sits the Etheridge Amish settlement, the largest Amish community in Tennessee. Several hundred families farming without electricity, selling sorghum, baskets, furniture, and vegetables off tables at the end of their own driveways. You don't tour it. You drive it, you stop, you buy, you go home. And that matters to your budget more than it sounds like it should. See, one of the quiet costs of retiring somewhere cheap is that cheap towns often have no real food. You end up driving 40 minutes for produce and paying convenience store prices in between, and it eats the savings you move for. Here, produce is a $2 table on a country road 8 months a year, and the furniture in your new house can be built by hand, locally, for less than the shipping on the stuff you'd have ordered online. Lawrenceburg itself is a functioning town. Around 11,000 people, a hospital, a square that's still busy, David Crockett State Park at the edge of it, and housing costs near the bottom third of the state. Now here's the wildcard fact about Lawrenceburg. David Crockett lived here. He ran a grist mill, a powder mill, and a distillery on Shoal Creek, served as the county's Justice of the Peace, and lost the entire operation in a flood in 1821, which is a large part of why he ended up in Congress and eventually at the Alamo. One flood in Lawrence County rerouted American history. Here's your takeaway. When you price a small town, price the groceries, not just the house. A place with real local food is worth a couple $100s a month you will never find on a listing sheet. Number 5, Savannah, Tennessee. When I first drove into Savannah, I assumed the river was going to cost me. It usually does. Water carries a premium in every state in this country, and this town sits directly on the Tennessee River in the southwest corner of the state. Then I looked at what river property actually closes for here. It's the cheapest real water access I found anywhere in Tennessee. Hardin County, about 7,000 people in town. And the river isn't an amenity here, it's just the river. People fish it, run boats on it, and live beside it without a single fee attached, because nobody ever built a gate around it and started charging admission. No dues, no association, no golf course you're funding whether you play or not, and that distinction is worth more than most people realize. In a resort community, the water is a product somebody sells you access to, and the price of that access rises every year whether you use it or not. Here, the water is just geography. Nobody owns the view. Nobody votes an assessment onto your budget because the marina needs a new roof. The practical piece is here too. There's a hospital in town, which is not something every small Tennessee town can claim, and it's the thing that decides whether a place still works for you at 80 instead of just at 62. Hardin County's tax rate keeps the annual bill modest, and the town has enough of a main street that you're not driving to another county for a hardware store or a pharmacy. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Savannah. 10 minutes across the river sits Shiloh National Military Park, where over 2 days in April of 1862, more Americans fell than in every previous American war combined. It stunned the entire country, and the house Grant used as his headquarters, the Cherry Mansion, is still standing on the bluff here, on a residential street, like a normal house. A general planned a battle from a front porch you can drive past on a Tuesday. Here's your takeaway. If you want water, go where the water is ordinary. The moment a town starts marketing its lake, you begin paying for the marketing. Savannah never bothered. If you're learning things about Tennessee you didn't expect, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who are running the same numbers you are. Number 4. Dayton, Tennessee. When I first drove into Dayton, I thought I'd found a lake town that hadn't figured out it was a lake town yet. Chickamauga Lake on one side, the Cumberland Plateau climbing on the other, Chattanooga, 40 minutes south, and prices that match none of that. Then I walked into the courthouse. Here's the money first. Rhea County property taxes run low even by Tennessee standards, and the lake is the reason that surprises people. Chickamauga is a TVA reservoir with real bass fishing, real boat ramps, and a shoreline that never got resort treatment, so the water here has almost no premium attached to it. An hour south, the same view on the same lake costs multiples of this. Same water, different county line. And Dayton has something most cheap towns don't, a 4-year college. Bryan College sits right in the middle of it, which means lectures, concerts, a library, and a steady supply of people under 30. A town with a college does not feel like a waiting room, and that's a thing you can't put a dollar figure on until you've spent a winter somewhere that does. You're also 40 minutes from a major medical center in Chattanooga without paying Chattanooga prices for the house, close enough for a cardiologist, far enough that nobody's bidding against you. Now here's the wildcard fact about Dayton. In 1925, in that courthouse, a high school teacher named John Scopes was put on trial for teaching evolution. Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan argued it out in July heat while the entire country listened on the radio, the first American trial ever broadcast live. The courtroom is restored, there's a museum downstairs, and Rhea County still holds real court in that same room. That's the trial I promised you at the start, not a replica. The room. Here's your takeaway. The best value in Tennessee is almost always the town 45 minutes outside the city everybody's already heard of. Number 3. McMinnville, Tennessee. Close enough for the hospital and the airport. Far enough that nobody has bid the houses up yet. When I first drove into McMinnville, I thought the nurseries were a coincidence. Field after field of young trees in rows for miles on both sides of the road. It isn't a coincidence. It's the entire local economy, and it has been for more than a century. McMinnville calls itself the nursery capital of the world, and that's not a slogan somebody painted on a water tower. Warren County's soil and climate turned this valley into one of the largest concentrations of commercial plant nurseries anywhere in the country. Hundreds of growers, trees shipped out of here to every state in the Union, which tells you something about what your yard is going to cost. And that's a real line item. Landscaping is an expense nobody forecasts and everybody pays. Here you buy at grower prices, from growers at the source. People put in full mature yards for what a garden center in Nashville charges for 3 shrubs and a bag of mulch. The rest holds up. Around 14,000 people, a hospital in town, a working Main Street, and Nashville, an hour and 20 minutes up the road when you need an airport or a specialist. Housing sits well below the state average, and the county rate keeps the annual tax bill inside what a benefit check absorbs without flinching. Now, here's the wildcard fact about McMinnville. Just outside town is Cumberland Caverns, a cave system running more than 30 miles underground with a chamber 300 feet down that has a chandelier hanging from the ceiling and hosts live concerts. Bands play down there. People buy tickets and go sit in a cave to watch, a concert hall under a mountain in a county of 40,000 people. Here's your takeaway. Every town is genuinely the best in the world at exactly one thing, and that thing is always cheap for the people who live there. Find out what your town makes, then buy it at the source. That habit, repeated, is most of what living well on a fixed income actually is. Number 2, Rogersville, Tennessee. When I first drove into Rogersville, I thought it was a nice enough main street and I nearly kept driving. Then somebody pointed at the courthouse and told me the year it was built, and I turned the truck around. This is the second oldest town in Tennessee, laid out in 1789, before Tennessee was a state. The Hawkins County Courthouse went up in 1836 and is the oldest courthouse still in use anywhere in the state. Same building, same job, nearly 2 centuries. Now here's the wildcard fact about Rogersville. Tennessee's first newspaper was printed here in 1791, not Nashville, not Knoxville. Here, a press in a frontier town on the Holston River, putting out the first paper anybody in this state ever read. 235 years later, this town still publishes one. So why does a history lesson land at number 2 on a Social Security list? Because Hawkins County is among the most affordable places in East Tennessee and almost nobody outside of it knows the name. Houses here run a fraction of the same house an hour southwest in Knoxville. The effective property tax rate is low even for a state already near the bottom nationally. And at 65, if you qualify on income, this county takes part in the Tennessee property tax freeze. Your bill locks at the amount you owed the year you qualified, and it never moves again. Not capped growth. Frozen. Sign up at 65 and the number on that bill is the number you'll still be paying at 85, no matter what happens to property values around you. And you're half an hour from the Tri-Cities, which means real hospital systems, a regional airport, and specialists you'd otherwise drive 2 hours to see. That combination, bottom-of-the-market housing with a frozen tax bill and a serious hospital half an hour out, is genuinely rare, and it's the reason this town sits this high. Here's the takeaway. History is free to look at and expensive to own. Live in the old town, not the old house, and you get 2 centuries of character for the price of an 80s ranch. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who does their homework before they buy. So do yourself a favor and hit that like button. Number 1, Livingston, Tennessee. When I first drove into Livingston, it was mid-afternoon on the Overton County Square, 4 trucks parked out front in a hardware store with the door propped open. I figured I'd found a pleasant, quiet town with nothing behind it. Then I drove 20 minutes north. That's the lake I promised you at the start. Dale Hollow sits up against the Kentucky line, 27,000 acres of water inside steep wooded ridges, one of the clearest lakes in the eastern United States. Because the shoreline is Federal Corps of Engineers land, most of it can never be developed. No wall of condos. No private docks fenced end to end. Just mile after mile of water with trees running down to meet it. The same as it looked 60 years ago. Here's the part I want you to hear clearly. There are people who keep boats on that lake worth more than every house on the Livingston Square combined. They fly into Nashville, drive out, and spend a week on water that is free for you to use every day of your life. 10 minutes from a house you paid cash for. That's the whole premise of this video, sitting in one place. And the arithmetic backs it up. Overton County carries some of the lowest housing costs in the state. No income tax on your benefit. A property tax bill in the low hundreds a year on a modest home with the freeze available at 65. There's a hospital in Livingston. Cookeville's larger medical center is 30 minutes south, and Nashville is under 2 hours when you need the airport. Now here's the wildcard fact about Dale Hollow. In 1955, a man fishing this lake pulled out a smallmouth bass weighing 11 pounds, 15 ounces. That is still the world record. 70 years, every lake on Earth, every angler with every piece of modern equipment, and nobody has beaten a fish caught here before most of us were born. 70 years. Still standing. And honestly, of every town on this list, it's the one I'd move to myself. Not because it's the cheapest, though it's close. Because it has the widest gap between what you spend and what you get, and that gap is the only number that matters once your income stops growing. Every town on this list has the one thing the expensive places quietly traded away, a life you can actually pay for with a check that arrives the same size every single month. So, let me say the real point plainly. Living like a millionaire has almost nothing to do with having $1 million. It's the distance between what comes in and what goes out. A retiree in Overton County with $2,000 a month and no mortgage has a wider margin than somebody in Denver with $6,000 and a payment. The second one looks richer. The first one sleeps better. You cannot control what Social Security pays you. You can control nearly everything on the other side of that equation, and the biggest lever on the whole board is a zip code. That's the entire story. Same check, different math. If this helped you rethink what your Social Security is actually worth, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment telling me which of these 7 you'd pick. If you're already living on a fixed income in a small Tennessee town, tell me what your monthly nut really is. That number helps people more than anything I can say from here. If this one hits 10,000 likes, I'll do a part 2 on the towns that just barely missed this list. I'll see you in the next.